Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sean Manaea. We're going to be talking about Nick Martinez. And basically, we're going to be flirting the idea of Sean Manaea being replaced in the rotation by Nick Martinez for that fifth starter spot. So if you guys haven't really realized how great Nick Martinez has been, he has been incredible out of the bullpen. That's why I think we've been a little bit hesitant to have this idea of, is it time to give up on Sean Manaea? Is Nick Martinez better off in the bullpen? He's probably the second best arm out of the bullpen. So there's a few reasons why it's a little bit confusing, but overall, I think it's something that has to be discussed. Sean Manaea is going to be starting on Sunday against the Nationals. I think this could be kind of a make or break start for him. He's going to be going up against not a very good starter for the Nationals. You guys have looked at the upcoming schedules. The National starters are not good. This is a series that if you don't win 3 or 4 games, it's kind of a disaster series. But Isaac, what do you think about the idea of Sean Manaea being replaced by Nick Martinez?
It's something that absolutely 100% needs to be talked about in all Padre platforms, everything Padres. It has to be talked about because you look at it and Sean Manaea has been horrific. I'm a Sean Manaea fan. I love Sean Manaea. But I'm not going to have any bias. Sean Manaea has sucked. He has not been good. And, granted in the past, he's been an amazing pitcher. So it's very amazing. It's kind of, giving him too much. 3.81 is like nothing crazy, but he's been very good. He's been very good. Like, in the Padres staff, he should be like a 2 or a 3 based off his career ERA, but he just hasn't been good. And the one start that, not a lot of people are talk about is that one against the Giants where he gave up through 4 or 5 runs, something like that, in 5 innings. But the only reason it doesn't get talked about is because we put up 10 in the just the amount of time that he was pitching. So the offense really carried him in that one. But having an 8+ ERA over the last month plus whatever it is just something we cannot afford to have right now, because we need to get to 90 wins. We need to be 24-18. We cannot. How many more starts do you think he has? Probably like a good like a good 8 more, 6 to 8 more. Those can't all be losses, man. Those cannot. If you're gonna keep pitching like this, they're almost all losses. Which means outside of your starts, we got to go 24-10, something like that. You can't do that. You really cannot do that. You have to be around because realistically, he's our number 5. Out of a number 5 pitcher, you normally expect a high 3 or around a 4 ERA. And that's actually very serviceable right now for Sean Manaea. You go out there, you go six innings, give up 3 runs. I'm fine with that. Considering the way you've been pitching recently, I'm fine with that. Because the offense, I feel like in those, 6 to 8 starts that you're going to start, will win 2 or 3 of those ball games, depending on who you're going against. Luckily for him, he's going against Patrick. Thank God, right? But with the way even Nick Martinez was pitching, dude, this music outside is annoying me. But with the way Nick Martinez was pitching to begin the season as a starter, he was no scrub. He was putting up around a high 3, mid 3 ERA out of the 5th or 6th slot in the rotation. He was fantastic. He was pretty damn good. Yeah, he had his outings where he got roughed up. One against the Braves, I remember specifically, but I mean, dude, it's not any worse than Sean Manaea. So the only consequence is you're taking essentially maybe your best bullpen arm, second best bullpen arm out of the bullpen, and you really don't want to do that. But we're getting into a really crucial stretch where the Padres need to start winning games. They need to start being that team that, is in the headlines. They won 7, 8 in a row. They need to be one of those teams to really secure a spot in the playoffs. Sean Manaea will not give you one of those. He's essentially been a guaranteed loss lately. So as much as I really like Sean Manaea, I love the energy he brings, the enthusiasm, the fun. He's such a fun player. You got to go based off the talent, and he hasn't shown any lately. I mean, of course, he's a very talented player. He's shown it in the past, but he hasn't shown it lately. But I'm gonna go ahead and say give him 1 or 2 more starts. I really hope he does bounce back because his stuff hasn't been great lately. The velocity, of course, has never been there for Sean Manaea, but with Sean Manaea, you were getting pinpoint accuracy with location, and he had pretty solid stuff. This year, you're not really getting that. So, hopefully he's able to bounce back.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that, we look at Sean Manaea and we remember that early season that he had, and he was great early on in the year. I mean, he had, I think for a while, he was the Padres leader in quality starts. And he's not a guy that's going to go out and just dominate the game. He's a, lower to mid 90s fastball kind of guy, kind of heavy usage on his fastball too, over 60% of the time. His average fastball was only 91 miles an hour though. And so, Isaac, you're talking about where the Padres are at in the season and like how important it is. Well, Sean Manaea is not producing. And I think that's ultimately why we're having this discussion, because Sean Manaea is not producing, and Nick Martinez, he might be the hottest pitcher on the Padres staff outside of Blake Snell. So if you go back into the last little stretch of these guys, it's like polar opposites. So last 15 games for Sean Manaea, 5.4 ERA, a 1.44 WHIP in 80 innings. That is not good. And throughout both July and August, opponents' batting averages are over 300. That's horrible. That is terrible. And then we look at Nick Martinez on the other side, and Nick Martinez's last, and I'll do 30 games because he hasn't started that much. Last 30 games, 317 in 88 innings. Last 15, 129 in 21 innings, and exactly a 1 whip. In August, he has not allowed a run. Nick Martinez has been a dominant player out of the bullpen. And I really think that's why it's hard to make this decision. I think that if Martinez was like a sixth spot, or they were like rotating around and he was still like thought of as a clear starter, I think that the switch already would have happened. But it's definitely tough. I think it's tough when you look at it, just because Sean Manaea, like his baseball savant, you can look and say like, oh, his baseball savant isn't that good. His baseball savant's never been that good. That's not the issue. But his numbers are far worse than his career averages, and it's the worst time of the year when he could have this happen. You're allowing over a 300 batting average over the past 6 to 7 weeks. That cannot be the case. So I think that this is kind of the final straw for Sean Manaea out in the rotation. And I think that if he doesn't perform on Sunday, I think that we're going to see Nick Martinez come in and take that spot next time around. Now, they might even skip that fifth spot just because they have a couple off days. So whoever pitches, I think it's that Tuesday after Sunday because Monday's off. They might end up come up and they might use 4 guys and then go 4 guys again because of the rest days. But overall, I think that we're looking at this, and I think that the numbers are just screaming. Take Sean Manaea, move him to the bullpen for a little bit. We get that he's Bob Melvin's guy and all that, but I think I don't know. I think that you gotta rock with him, and I think you gotta rock with Nick Martinez, and Sean Manaea has to get moved to the pen if he does not start performing very, very soon. So that's ultimately where I'm at with this whole situation. I think Isaac, you have a couple Wi-Fi issues, but Isaac's back here. So you think Sunday's the final straw for Sean Manaea?
I would hope so. I would hope so in the sense that, you're facing the Nationals. This is really a big get right spot for you where you're facing a lowly team. You're facing the worst pitcher in baseball. Like, this is a perfect opportunity for you to, you know, go 6-7 innings, allow 2 runs, whatever it is, and get a W, leave with a W, help this Padres team complete a sweep, hopefully, because you Darvish and Blake go on the first 2. You got Joe Musgrove going against a rookie pitcher, and Sean Manaea needs to be able to salvage his past results and be able to come out with a W in that game. So it's a big get right situation for Sean Manaea. Personally, I would want it to be his last straw, but just going based off what I think will happen, it probably won't. You're probably just going to keep seeing him get thrown out there because Nick Martinez's presence in the bullpen has been fantastic. And Sean Manaea, like, if you throw him in the bullpen, he doesn't really have bullpen experience. So I feel like just knowing that, like, no matter what happens, they're going to keep throwing Sean Manaea out there. Like, trust me, I wish that wasn't the case, but just going based off what I personally think will happen. And I mean, you look at the baseball savant numbers, you brought it up. His baseball savants never look good. Like, it's never been red. Like this year, 4.83 ERA, expected ERA 4.04. Around, I want to say that's around what he's normally at. Like 2021 expected ERA 4.12. His best expected ERA is a 3.43 in 2019. which was, I believe, his best year. So 404, that is a serviceable number 5. That is a pretty decent number 5. That is essentially what we want him to be. Now, what's been killing him this year is his walk percentage. Walk percentage this year is at 8.6%. In 2020, it was at a 3.6. In 2019, 6.4. Both of those being his best years. Last year, a 5.4%. He is walking too many people right now. That has been the big killer for Sean Manaea. If he gets that down, he will be a pretty solid pitcher, but he is struggling with walks right now. So it's not like I have a crazy amount of confidence in him to bounce back, but I also don't think he's gonna be like this for much longer. Like, he has a history of being a good pitcher, so of course I want to be confident that he's gonna put on and really finally go back to what he was earlier this year, because earlier this year he was pretty damn good, like really good. Just hasn't been that way lately. So hopefully he's able to find it again. Stop, the walks. It's too much. 8.6%. It's up 2 or 3% compared to what your best career numbers were. But I mean, I'm looking at the rest of it, and it's like all very similar. 238 expected batting average, whereas in his best year it was like a 215. I mean, everything's so similar. It's just really astonishing to see, how bad he's been. I mean, considering like maybe it's just his luck's not going his way anymore.
Yeah, and another thing I have noticed too a little bit, and this is more recent than early on in the year, but when he's been throwing his fastball, he's been throwing it in the heart of the plate, and that's been a difference. Is that like earlier on in the year when he was really performing well, and when it was he felt like almost like an automatic quality start. And you remember those times? That was when Taylor Rogers and him. It was like, oh, the Padres fleeced these deals. Like what a move! Like what moves by Preller at right before the season started. And it was awesome, and I still think that's been an important part when we are going to look back on this Padres season, because they provided a ton for the Padres early on in the season. But where they're at now, I it's just hard, because I think you're right, Isaac. But like a 300 batting average over 2 months, that's really bad. Like that is, and the walk percentage has been up too. His last few starts, he hasn't walked a lot of guys, but in July he was walking like 3-4 like batters often in games, and that was really coming back to bite him. So I think that maybe you might see them, like I said, you might see them skip the start in the future. But I think that you should go to Nick Martinez. But Isaac, I think you're right. I think that Bob Melvin's kind of shown, hey, I'm going to stick with my guys. I'm going to, let my pitchers go deep into games, whether that's the right move or not. And I think that what we're probably going to see is we're going to probably see like kind of that veteran manager move from Bob Melvin, where he's like, no, I'm sticking with my guys. I'm going to let him ride out this cold streak. I don't know if that's the right decision. Time will tell. Isaac is bringing up that, a lot of his expected numbers are not as bad as what he's currently looking like. But I think time's going to tell with this one if it's going to work out. Do I think that Sean Manaea is going to be replaced? No. Should he be replaced? Probably. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Isaac, you're the same way there? All right. Well, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. I feel like Chase is probably the same way. Chase has always liked Sean Manaea a lot too, but we've been talking about his struggles quite a bit. So definitely and anyone watching has been able to recognize them as well. So kind of a tough spot for Sean Manaea. I think as a guy, as a person, when he's come on and interviewed during the games, he's been really funny to listen to. It's very clear that he is one of the leaders of the clubhouse, and guys really do like him. So don't want to take anything from him away in that regard. But in terms of the performance lately, it has not been the best. So that's why we're having this discussion. But I think that's probably going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. And we'll be going live on Sunday to recap, hopefully, a 4-game sweep against the Nationals. If not a 4-game sweep, hopefully the Padres will be taking 3 out of 4. But with that said, thank you guys for listening, and we'll